Today we have an amazing guest. I say that every time, but truly, we have amazing guests on the show. Today's episode, you're going to hear from someone who has not only grown and scaled a business and exited on a very large scale one time, but multiple times, and had multiple failures. A lot of people wonder why certain businesses don't make it and some do. I think you're going to learn some things today. This has been such a fun conversation. Today we had Sanjib Kalita on the show, and he has built and exited multiple companies, including companies sold to companies like Google and big purchasers who are looking for strategic plays in multiple industries. Today's interview, I would say the biggest impact that it had on me was the focus on what it takes to not only grow and scale, but where are you going to be happy exiting that project? I think a lot of founders don't think about the exit. They don't think about, well, what am I going to do after this business, or where am I taking this business to so I feel comfortable leaving it? A lot of people feel trapped in their business. They feel like they can't get out. And because of that, they end up being miserable as a business owner. Don't let that happen. You're going to hear some great advice from Sanjib on what he has done, who he turns to when he feels stressed and overwhelmed, and how he balances his time. So take a listen to the interview, and I hope it has an impact on you and gives you some ideas of what it's going to take for you to grow and scale your business. Welcome to the Growth and Scaling Podcast. This is your host, Todd Westra, and I am so glad you're here today because we are going to interview an amazing founder or executive who is going to share with us their decisions that they made that exploded their growth. So if you need some inspiration, you want to hear how other businesses are doing it, this is the place to be, and we are glad you're here. Enjoy this episode. Hey, we are so excited today to welcome onto the show Sanjib Kalita. And he has an amazing company that he's been able to grow and scale over the past few years. And we cannot wait to hear about him. We're going to dive deeper into him and who he is. Sanjib, tell us who you are and what do you do?
Oh, thank you very much, Todd. Really glad to be here. Sanjib Kalita, I'm the CEO of Guppy.ai. And what Guppy does is basically enables consumers and businesses to truly own their data, as opposed to being beholden to these, nebulous third parties that do all kinds of, things we don't want to do with our data. And
right.
and so we're doing this with blockchain technology, and
awesome.
It's been a challenge, but it's been fun.
Now, Sanjib, you're going to have to do me a favor because I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to data and what people do with data.
Yeah.
Most people are oblivious to what happens in the world when people get a hold of data.
Sure. Absolutely. So I guess let me start off by saying that I used to work at Citibank in the credit card business. I used to help manage, $30 billion credit card portfolio. So really familiar with the credit card and how we're using like credit bureau data. But I left Citi, about 12 years ago, 13 years ago to work on startups. And I actually, if I go back 10 years, April 1st of 2012, I guess now it's 11 years. April 1st of 2012, I got engaged. April 2nd of 2012, Google acquired the startup I was working on. April 13th, I was buying an apartment in Manhattan. And April 29th, basically it was our wedding date because one of my parents was sick, so we just wanted to get married as quickly as possible. And so it was a crazy month. And
that is a crazy month.
Yes,
that's a lot of life functions.
Yes, all of the life events in 1 month. And
holy cow!
And because I was buying the apartment, they pulled my credit report. According to the credit report, I was married to a man in California. I had 5 foreclosures, 4 bad auto loans. They said I lived in New York, so they had some stuff right, but then obviously a lot of stuff wrong. So
holy cow!
Yeah. So.
And how's your ex-husband?
he was a bit disconcerted that I was getting married again. So,
I'm sure. I'm sure they can legalize that now anyway.
yeah, no, it was it was a surprise to say the least. And but the other surprise was like getting it cleared up was so painful. And like I said, I was an industry insider. I was used to using these data sources and like
right.
and I didn't know until like I was trying to buy my apartment and it was like unfortunately a lot of people don't know until it's like critical and
They need it. Yeah.
and they need it and so and go for that sort of got my mind thinking, okay, this system needs to change. And to actually just a quick add on to that, like I know even though I monitor my data, like I know that someone has opened up a credit card, some accounts in Miami.
Right.
I've never been in Miami,
right.
and so it's just you never know what happens with your data.
Well, I can tell you right now, as a former owner of a call center, during that time period, data was so loose. I mean, people were. I would sometimes buy lists to call on, and occasionally those lists would come with credit card numbers on file.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, that's how loose data used to be.
Wow.
Now they've implemented a lot of new laws and people get caught with that. They're going to jail. I mean, it is not a good thing to have happen right now, but it still happens. And it's very, very important for people to understand the problem that you solve is huge. I mean, it's so huge. So tell us how you got into this professionally. I mean, how did you pivot and turn this into an actual business?
Sure. So we sold that company to Google. Then I actually left Google to help build a fintech conference business called Money 2020.
Awesome.
And we grew that and we sold that as well too. And but I was in charge of putting together the agenda, picking speakers. And so back in 2012, 13, 14, like I was putting together sessions about Bitcoin and then I used to meet with one of my really good friends, and we used to meet and grab a beer and talk about business ideas and he talked about Bitcoin, and like he's like, oh, what if we do something with like lending Bitcoin or and I was like, actually I think you can use that infrastructure for something completely different and make that data infrastructure transparent or more understandable. And so that's sort of how we got onto this path. And
very cool.
Yeah. So when we first started playing around with it, like there's no Ethereum, there's only Bitcoin, and then we've sort of been. It's been a long path. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Listen, I can, believe me. Yeah, I understand. But something that's been interesting that you've mentioned now, two other business that you casually mentioned that you exited.
Yeah.
I mean, for most people, the venture of building something and selling it off to someone like Google is an enormous accomplishment. So first of all, congratulations on that exit.
Thank you.
And then you mentioned very subtly another business you built and exited on the event thing. I mean, it sounds like this comes very naturally to you. What is it about growing this business in fintech and using blockchain and all these other things to build a new business model? What is it about that whole growth process would you say is like your favorite part?
So that's an awesome question, and I will actually go back to the first startup I worked on, which we didn't have an exit on, which was an educational technology company. We were trying to bring online classes onto social network platforms. We did the first official Khan Academy app, did apps for MIT, for Cornell. This is back in 2009, 10, so a while ago.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point, Time Magazine listed one of our MIT app as top 50 of the year. We were listed as one of the top 10 most innovative companies in education by Fast Company magazine, even though we're literally only two people. And
wow.
And so for me, the biggest learning there was a small group of highly motivated, highly talented people can do a lot. And coming from the corporate world where you had a lot more people, you wouldn't necessarily believe that.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, exactly. And so working on something, and obviously we worked really hard, but I think the thing I love the most is that working in startups is that what you think about has a much higher chance of becoming reality than if you work at a big company, and that's a bit of the motivation. Like, let's make this vision real. Let's make other people try it out.
I love it. So you now you've had one business that you didn't necessarily exit. You have another couple that you've exited. You've got one that you've built right now. I think a lot of people fail to think about when they're launching a business. All they can think about is launching.
Yeah.
All they can think about is getting this thing off the ground, generating some revenue, and making things happen. What is it about the next stage that people oftentimes forget? Like you talked about being able to make decisions. You talked about being able to, enable something to happen that maybe you couldn't in a bigger organization. But like, I'm just kind of curious, your take on post-launch, how do you strategize to build that exit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that I found is that it is so important not to be afraid to be different.
Interesting.
And to differentiate yourself. Like if I go to Money 2020, actually when we were back in 2004, we launched in 2000. First event was 2012, second 2013, and then 2014 was the exit. But in the midst of that process, actually, we wanted to continue to grow the business. Between the first and second year, we doubled, and we're pretty decent scale for the industry. And then that third year, in retrospect, we wound up doubling again, but that was not a done deal. So, for example, that year I put together a rap video about being a fintech entrepreneur,
This is pre-TikTok.
Yes, pre-TikTok. and so we actually got several CEOs or industry leaders to be part of it. We hired one of the actors from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, from Two Broke Girls, from Office Space, and we
awesome.
And it was a well-produced video, and
I love it.
And also I hope this is okay, but like our hook was about a payments entrepreneur who's doing a biometric payment application. So rather than identifying you by your eye or your fingerprint, it identified you by your butt. So the hook was, it was pay by ass. And
I love it.
And it was, we're obviously poking fun at everything, but in a fun way. But like, that was like definitely pushing the bounds of the industry. But because of that, like people, they got a chuckle out of it. Yeah, they paid attention, and I'm sure that didn't help. That didn't hurt us in our valuation. When you're trying to exit.
Right. I mean, there's a lot to think about when you're trying to exit, and I sadly meet a lot of entrepreneurs who don't have an exit plan. They just kind of move forward with hoping that they can just keep growing until some future point that I don't even think they really imagine what's at the end of the road there.
Yeah.
And I love how casually you've been talking about, this one we led to this exit, this one didn't exit, this one, how do you help? I see a big challenge in the founder space of people who don't see that, who don't see a way out. They just kind of picture themselves in their business and they're stuck in their business forever.
Yeah.
How do you help someone kind of see the light, that there's more businesses in your head and in your heart than just this one thing?
That is such a difficult question, because it's like, on one hand, the only way you're going to be a successful entrepreneur is by having the stick-to-itiveness the
Right.
ability to withstand all of the naysayers. And
Right.
at the same time, it's also important to recognize, what is the end game. And I think it's a bit like, like I'll go back to one of my college friends. He used to talk about like how after, when you're in school, you have freshman year, sophomore year, there's bounds and everything is time
Right.
bound and you know what you're going towards. But he's like, yeah, and I graduated and like it just goes on forever. It never ends. and
Seriously.
and I was like, yeah, and I was still in school. I was like, oh, I never thought about it in that context. So I do think that it's part of it is a bit of understanding like what's your goal,
Right.
and there's financial goals, there's personal goals, there's professional goals, and
Right.
I think that a lot of times it's you get caught up in stuff and like, so let's just say like, oh, I want to make $1 million, and then you get into it, then they're like, oh yeah, don't be happy unless you make $100 million, and and
Right.
that's obviously a very different thing. So like,
Yeah.
I mean, think about, this also requires a bit of like, okay, what's important to you.
Right.
I also find that I'm sure you can relate to this too. Is like it does take a toll on other aspects. Being an entrepreneur takes tolls on other aspects of your life. So
Family. Yeah.
if the way I think about it, like people talk about balance in life, and I think it's
Yeah.
impossible to have a balance in point in time, but it's better to have a balance over a time frame. So like,
Sure.
so
Sure.
like, you can't be 100% on work all the time,
I
but
like
if you
that.
spread it out like that, that's sort of a
There's like little sprints, right?
yeah.
There's a sprint where you're focusing on startup and launch. There's a sprint where you've got to spend some time with your family a little bit. There's a sprint where you've got to, really focus on other important things than just your business, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're pointing at?
Exactly. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a fun concept.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's sort of because otherwise, like, you probably, like a lot of people you see in the news, like you wind up like a weird person who can't relate to anyone, right?
Right. No, there's definitely that too. And we all know those people. but I'll tell you what, this is inspiring. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders, when they get going in their business and they hit some walls, they hit some challenges like we've been talking about, like not knowing where your exit path is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get through that? Is there someone in your network you look at that you're just like, oh my gosh, every time I feel like I hit a wall, I just look at so-and-so and they kind of inspire me to keep moving. They inspire me to keep going.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of the folks that I've worked with on startups over the years, like they're definitely, we've sort of been in the trenches, if you will, and so
Right.
we can call each other up, and there's a bit of history there.
Right.
Another piece is I obviously, like, I'm married. My wife is very supportive too, and
100%.
which is like, if you don't have that, then all bets are off.
It's
right?
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and especially when she found out you had a husband, that must have been awkward.
Yeah.
That was an interesting challenge to get. No, what a fun story. So as you look at people like your wife and you hit these walls, I would say that for me, that's probably been one of my biggest influences as well. We're going on 25 years of marriage.
Oh, wow.
Well, we did
Congratulations.
25 years last summer.
Wow.
And I don't know how she puts up with me being an entrepreneur and a founder and trying to launch and grow things all the time and support a family. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
What as you talk with entrepreneur groups and you mentor and you help people through that launch phase, what do you feel like the most common bit of advice you're giving them is?
I think what I find a lot of times is that like, and I'll also say, like, sometimes I fall into this trap too. Like, you get so wrapped up in the mousetrap that you're building that, like, you put on blinders and you don't see the bigger picture sometimes. And
Right.
and and
Right.
and I think that a lot of times, and I think that's why it's good to get like third parties to like take a look at what you're doing and
Totally.
give you sanity checks, because when you're so focused on it, it's very easy to lose sight of that.
You get lost in your own words, you get lost in your own terminology, like everything kind of becomes all you think about all day. And it is so nice to have that third party. Well, listen, I absolutely love this conversation. Clearly you're someone who's going to be able to help people who watch this episode understand some of the intricacies of just knowing, like, growing is fun.
Yeah.
Launching is fun, but knowing that there is an end in sight gives a lot of peace and a lot of focus to get to that point, so that you're not stuck in this endless cycle of being trapped in your business.
Yes.
Because I think that happens to a lot of people.
I thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and really enjoyed talking. This is a lot of fun for me.
Perfect. How do people get a hold of you? Are you active on any social media? Can people follow you anywhere?
Sure, I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And that's probably the social network that's the best one. My email address is also Sanjib, Sanjib at Guppy.ai too, if you want to reach out to me directly.
Perfect. Sanjib, I appreciate so much your time today. I know this is going to help impact people who are out there thinking, what does it take to scale? So thanks so much for being on today.
Thank you very much, Todd. I really appreciate it.
Hey, what did you think? I love that interview. We had an amazing conversation after the interview that I wish I had on the show. Sanjib is one of those rarities, one of those guys who's very humble. You probably wouldn't know walking in the street that he has had multiple successful exits, but his impact on our community, I think, will be felt far and wide because of his raw discussion on and casual discussion about the importance of his exits. The exits are important. An exit plan is critical. When you focus on what it takes to scale, you need to know to what end are you going to be okay scaling it to. A lot of boutique businesses are only going to make it into about a 10 employee size business. And that's okay. I've had one before. And it was fun to grow to 10 employees. But it was not possible to scale a boutique business past that point sometimes. And that's okay. But what's important is that you select your business based off what's going to work for your balance of life. If all you do is think about your business, you're going to suffer in other parts of your life. If all you think about is your family and not focus at all on your business will likely fail. There is a balance. And as a provider and as someone who wants to take good care of their family, it is important for you to find that balance, know your exit, know to what point you're going to push, and then hand it off to someone else. And I hope that's what you got out of it. That's definitely what I got out of today's conversation. And I hope that you share this episode with anyone you know who's wondering what steps to take next. Feeling trapped in your business? Jump on board and listen to this episode. I hope it helps other people learn how important that exit really can be in your optimism and your ability to stay focused on growing and building what you've started.